So, do we have a deal? Well, when it comes to Brexit, it's never easy to predict. So many pieces need to fall into place, and it looks like one of the players is planning to walk away. The negotiations have been going on, and it seems to have hit a wall. That wall being time. Boris Johnson has always planned to run down the clock, but there are multiple clocks, and some of them are moving at different speeds. Let's go to ratification. The EU have a more complex ratification process than the UK. The European Parliament needs to have the ratification of any deal take place during the week starting the 14th of December. The European Parliament needs to have any deal scrutinised by a number of committees. As a comparison, the Brexit withdrawal agreement had to be reviewed by 11 separate committees, so we can expect something similar with a final Brexit deal. This should take up to 4 weeks to complete. Now, there was speculation that the EU would ignore the European Parliament and just get heads of state to sign off on any deal, but that seems not to be the case anymore. The EU has changed strategy, going from speed to patience. There was a possibility of having a provisional application for some parts of the deal on the 1st of January. However, the EU has dropped this as they think it would just create too much confusion. EU sources seem to be telling journalists that the bloc would prefer to let the UK pull the plug. We have to remember that Europe has been planning for a no deal for some time now. Even when Boris Johnson and the Brexiteers were talking up a deal, I recently talked about how the port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands has always expected a messy Brexit and prepared for one. The EU believes it can weather a no-deal storm and can do it much better than the UK could. This is not to say that many countries that deal directly with the UK will not be harmed. Of course, we're talking about Ireland being the most severely affected, but others such as Denmark, the Netherlands, Northern France and Belgium could suffer too. However, the EU believes that it could compensate these nations for the financial pain that they would see inflicted upon them, at least at the beginning. I've said this before, the EU will protect itself. That is its priority. If it requires throwing a lurry load of money at the problem, it will do that. The EU, while it would like a deal, seems to believe that it has enough to live with the withdrawal agreement. The situation is not perfect, but it could be worse. The Vice President of the European Commission has said recently that while many deadlines have been set in stone and then crumbled, one is not going to change, the one of the 1st of January 2021. The EU and the UK don't seem to be willing to budge on the issue of the level playing field. But if one side does break, I'm looking at the UK here. Then it's likely that the other issues will slide into place too. However, Brussels, it seems, is planning for Boris Johnson to not move on the level playing field. We risk one side not correctly reading the other and both believing that their counterpart at the table is unwilling to move, so that might actually strengthen their resolve to stick to their guns as well. Brussels sees the level playing field as so fundamental to European integrity that it would prefer to let the UK leave without a deal if that integrity was undermined. Michel Barnier, the European Union's chief negotiator, was forced to suspend those negotiations on Thursday when a member of his staff tested positive. This meant that the UK chief negotiator David Frost and his team returned to the UK but will continue the talks via videolink. So, are we going to see a deal? It would appear no, unless the UK government moves, as the EU will not on the red lines it has set down since the beginning. However, a possible cryptic tweet was sent by David Frost on the 15th of November, a few days before the suspension. It read, "We are working to get a deal, but the only one that's possible is the one that is compatible with our sovereignty and takes back control of our laws, our trade, and our waters. That has been our consistent position from the start, and I will not be changing it." On the surface, it doesn't seem to say anything different, if we compare it to the typical rhetoric we've heard from Brexiteers in the past. But I'd like to analyse the wording here because I think David Frost may be giving away a clue. First, we need to remember that what is contained within a deal is actually irrelevant when it comes to selling that deal. It's all spin when it comes to selling the deal to the public. Both the EU and the UK, if a deal is signed, need to sell it to their respective parliaments. So let's look at the words contained within this tweet. He uses the word sovereignty. Now this is a meaningless term because UK sovereignty was never an issue when Britain was a member of the European Union. However, it's a popular buzzword at the moment, so if Boris can sell the idea that it has been won back in this deal, then it will help its passage through Parliament. The next is take back control, another set of buzzwords that need to be hammered on if Boris wants his eventual bill to travel through both houses. His Brexit mantra was always about taking back control, which is again a useless term as the EU never had control over the UK. So if Boris Johnson can sell the idea that he has won this control back from the evil EU, he should be able to win over the public. Public opinion may be more important to him than actual support from his own party. If he believes that the UK public are behind him, he may be able to ignore the likes of the ERG, who will in no doubt be in two minds to support him. As I said at the beginning, a lot of different pieces need to fall into place. Will they? Perhaps. The next few days will tell us if Boris Johnson has moved and if the EU is willing to let him get away with his phantom heist. While the last few months may have appeared like a struggle, this is actually the easy part. Agreeing a trade deal with the EU is not the most difficult aspect of this whole saga. Selling it to the public will require a lot of political spin. Now, the fact that Dominic Cummings seems to have left, we'll have to look into that further, it could mean that Boris Johnson could struggle without the former Vote Leave colleague's propaganda skills. Two battles lay ahead for Boris Johnson, convincing the public and convincing Parliament. This is, of course, if he manages to agree something with the European Union. But remember, this is just one trade deal. Even if the UK leaves without one, there are hundreds of agreements that will still need to be signed, from pet travel to financial services. Remember, those were not part of the one that we're talking about today. The EU have been preparing for a no-deal Brexit. They have been quite transparent about that. Have the UK been preparing for one? Well, not really. So, is Boris Johnson bluffing? Well, according to some reports, Sir David Frost has told Boris Johnson to be prepared to shake the EU's hand next Tuesday. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. You ensure that this channel continues to exist. I'm eternally grateful for all of your support. If you join Patreon, you will receive instant access to our Discord server, where we have both audio and video chats. You can chat with me and other patrons, where we discuss important and non-important issues. Becoming a patron per month costs about the same as a large coffee, so why not check it out?